Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm calling the meeting to order. Meeting was properly posted on November 8th. Roll call.
Hira.
Here.
Beal.
Here.
Dearson.
Here.
Nicholson.
Here.
Ruland.
Here.
Schlant.
Here.
Springstead.
Here.
We have a full house, aces over kings. Okay. Are there, item 4, are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? If none, is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
By Scott,
Second.
second by Troy. Discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, by the same sign. That motion is carried. Item 5, approve the minutes from the last regular board meeting.
Motion approved.
Motion by Jeff,
Second.
second by Ray. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed by the same sign. That motion is carried. Item 6, appearances and significant correspondence. I don't see anyone for that. We'll move on to item 7. Couple of items. Good news, bad news. Bad news is that the home at the end of Crescent Street that the building inspector ordered raised is not known. I saw a flurry of emails this morning, so I would imagine the attorneys and the building inspector are going to be enforcing the court order. I'm not sure whether that property owner is going to end up paying that or whether the village is going to end up paying it. So, just, they had a November 10 deadline on that. The good news, we were informed by Cardinal Glass that they're going to be constructing approximately 100,000 square foot addition on their plant here in Mazomanie. This will be on the east side of the building. It'll roughly double the size of the present plant. They're moving a production line from their coated glass plant in Toma. And they're planning to start construction yet this year with completion mid-2020. So the first year of assessment, now this is in the TIF district, TIF number 4. The first year of assessment is 2021. The first year that increased taxes will be used toward TIF 4 debt is 2022. Cardinal currently pays $275,000 for real estate taxes on their current plant. TIF number 4 is scheduled to be paid in full in 2026. This new addition will speed up that repayment. TIF number 4 includes Cardinal, Plastic Ingenuity, and Dollar General. So the current increment that will be coming on our tax roll sometime prior to 26 now, it would appear, is $12,021,000. I don't know, and I haven't got the cost figures as to this new expansion yet, but the assessment from that expansion will add to that $12 million. So that $12+ million, and it's probably in excess of $15 million, is going on the tax roll at some point in the not too distant future. When we get the cost figures, Johnson Block will complete a new calculation as to when TIF 4 is going to be paid off and when those properties will be added to the tax roll. It will increase employment at Cardinal, but I don't have any firm numbers yet. That's a heavily, highly automated plant. The other good news, it's expected to double the electric bill of Cardinal. Cardinal currently pays an average of $49,000 a month. So double that, we're just shy of $100,000 a month. The size of our west substation is sufficient to handle this expansion. The size of our water reservoir is sufficient, and the size of our sewer plant is sufficient. So we aren't looking at any infrastructure costs to the village. Good news, guys. We needed some good news after a couple of years of Okay, any questions? Item 8, village administrator report. Peter tells me that he had an eye exam, he can't read too well. So I'll just summarize quickly. 5 hours on FEMA work, 5 hours on ordinance violations, especially within the historic district. Various financial products, the 2020 budget and all the utility budget, 90 hours. Brief discussion with Sheriff's Department about our contract, 2 hours. Work on the PSC, our electric rate case, 10 hours. And a meeting concerning the trail and bridge from Mazo and Sauk, and a meeting of Gateway to Driftless. Questions? Item 9, deputy in charge report. Stacy, welcome.
So we all see the little yellow tags. Property crime this year is, we all hear it in the news, especially in the Madison area, that they're stealing cars. They're getting into unlocked cars and then using the garage door openers to get inside the house. And they're starting to branch out into the county. So, it'll work out perfect, actually. We just want to make people aware, not to make it easy for them. Don't leave anything of value in plain sight. Lock the cars. Close your garage doors at night. Actually, when I have garage doors open at night, I take that and I walk in the garage and leave it in their door to show, like, look, someone could have been there. I was here. But for alternate side, parking begins November 15th. So I usually will tag cars with the orange big flags, so they're just getting used to the idea. And I'm gonna put those with it. And then actually I might just test cars, and if they're open, I might just leave that on the seat. Just as we just wanna get the word out. So that's the big thing, proactive. And then we're getting ready for our Shop with a Cop event, which is December 8th, where we take 5 families from Mazo, and we go shopping at Target and gift wrap at the VFW in Madison and eat pizza. So it's a really fun day. So we're getting ready. We're getting amped up for that, for Christmas. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Okay, items 10, 11, 12, 13 are all second meeting of the month. Item 14, Lake Marion update.
We had a fish stocking last week, which was scheduled, and
They didn't go.
they did. Yes, they did. That's about all there is to report on the lake. Everything is working well. Ice on it today.
Yeah.
Aerators are on now.
Are they? Okay. Item 15, update on Mazo 2020 committee.
Nothing scheduled, we'll schedule something soon so we can update on housing and on the gateway to the Driftless.
Item 16, violations of property ordinance.
That was in the, basically the admin report. There's a couple properties in the historic district that Sarah's working with to make sure they get the certificate of appropriateness done.
Item 17, flood update.
We got, what you saw in the report, $72,000 from FEMA and from the state. Just last week, we have about, so that gives us a little over $80,000 now that we've collected, and we've got about another $110,000, $120,000 coming.
Okay. 18, old business, brush recycling site.
Got some info to report on that. On October 29th, I met with Brian Berquist and Sherry Leafring, the wetland consultant we engaged with, and a rep from the DNR at the site. And the discussion was to get the DNR's feedback on if our intent to develop that site as a formal brush and compost recycling location was acceptable. And so there was a two-part response to that The first response was, if indeed this was a man-made wetland, it's easy to unmap it. If it is not indeed a man-made wetland that can be shown with, they use two different types of maps. I can't tell you what they're called, but the newest one is 1937, and then they use another one that goes back to the turn of the century, so they have some really old records to look back on, and so without that ability to prove that, the next step would be for it to remain a wetland and the village to apply for a wetland fill permit to fill the area that we want to use. And so the DNR was open to investigating this with us. The first thing that would need to happen is the wetland delineation and the investigative work. The wetland delineation requires some soils work and vegetation studies. That is work that is usually allowed up until mid-November. However, it snowed the day before we met. And so the DNR had formally instructed their employees to stop any wetland work for the year. So where it's at right now is our consultant, Sherry and Brian, are working to gather as much info as they can to build a case and be prepared to move it to the next step once the snow melts. But it's slowly moving forward, but formally nothing can happen until spring. And with that, the DNR has asked the village to close the site until we are able to have it permitted. That's all I have to report on that. Good news and bad news.
So we will close it.
Is it typically closed for the winter, or it's open already?
It doesn't get used in the winter. It's not closed, but it can be.
Are you gonna put a chain across it or something like?
The field rep that was there that day was happy with a closed sign.
Okay. Good. Questions of Mark? Moving on to new business. I have this first item put on here. I know that each of you read your municipality magazine cover to cover every month that comes from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. There was an article in there on titled Public Comment Q&A. And this has to do with item 6 that we title Appearances and Significant Correspondence. One of the questions posed, should governmental bodies allow the public to speak outside of public comment periods? In other words, should members of the public that are not doing a presentation or are part of an agenda item, should members of the public be allowed to speak outside of public comment periods? The answer, generally speaking, no. Allowing the public to interject outside of public comment periods raises significant legal issues and is probably not a best practice. And I'm summarizing the article. Some of these are actual quotes from the article. A governing body that includes a public comment period in its meetings will typically have created either a designated public forum or a limited public forum. A designated public forum is one that is not traditionally open for expressive activity, being able to express one's views without limitation. But that the government has opened for expressive activity. So a designated public forum, somebody could get up and talk about the national election and why they despise Joe Biden and love Trump, or vice versa. Things unrelated to the village government and to the issues that are being discussed at the meeting. In a limited public forum, governing bodies may restrict participating speakers to certain topics such as agenda items only. That type of restriction is subject to judicial scrutiny and will survive as long as the restriction is reasonable in light of the purpose served by the forum, and does not restrict speech based on particular viewpoints within the permitted topics of conversation. So we could restrict public comment to agenda items, but people pro and con are allowed to speak. There is no prohibition based on viewpoint. Merely specifying a time period during meetings for public comment with nothing further likely results in a designated public forum, and content-based restrictions on speech will be unlikely to survive judicial scrutiny. And that's what we have right now, because all we have is a specified time period for public comment, and we have a designated public forum. We've opened that public comment period to any item of free speech, and it doesn't have to do with agenda items for village government. On the other hand, when a governing body limits a public comment period from the outset, such as limiting discussion to agenda items, it will likely have created a limited public forum, and content-based restrictions on speech are permissible if reasonable in light of the forum's purpose. Second question, can governing bodies limit participation in public comment period to certain categories of speakers? Yes, but only if the governing body creates a limited public forum when it establishes the public comment period. For instance, a governing body could choose to apply reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions to the public comment period that give priority to resident and village taxpayer speakers. If the governing body has placed an overall time limitation on the public comment period, such as 1 hour, all speakers could then be prioritized within that time frame: resident, village taxpayer, and other. So, what we have right now is a designated public forum, and we leave ourselves open to all items of free speech. And if you remember the admonition that Village Attorney Bill Cole has gave us with respect to establishing a Facebook page, he said, whatever you do not permit postings by other than village personnel. Otherwise, you've got a free speech forum and anything goes on that. So I would suggest, based on this article, and this was from Claire Silverman, the chief of legal at League of Municipalities, I'd recommend that a motion that the Village of Mazomanie create a limited public forum comment period at each meeting of the village board, that the public comment period of each open meeting be limited to published agenda items only, that those wishing to express an opinion on published agenda items register to speak in advance and be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes per speaker, that registered speakers be heard in order of residents, village taxpayers, and others who are neither residents or taxpayers of the village, and that the total amount of time devoted to public comment be limited to 30 minutes per meeting unless exceeded by vote of the village board on a per meeting basis.
So I have a little question with that. So there are things that happen in the village that we, not all of us are privy to, that maybe somebody would come in and it would not necessarily be an agenda item. So can that be rewritten that it doesn't have to be an agenda item, but could deal with village issues?
That's what I was kind of thinking when the gentleman came in and talked to us about taking down the trees by his house. That wasn't technically an agenda item at that point, but we kind of steered him in the right direction and said,
Yep,
do this and come back.
yep, that's a good point. I don't have the answer to that, but I think we should find out before we proceed further with this. I think we have to do something, folks. But you're right, and I'm glad you raised that issue. Anything else we should be looking at?
Okay, so Northwest Maine could fall into that category, how they come and give us a little update. They aren't necessarily, it isn't on our agenda, right?
Well, yes. If it's not on the agenda,
Then we need to have some kind of process on how they can speak to us.
yeah,
And then right now, they fill out a piece of paper, and does Sue say yes or no, or do you say yes or no, and we just let everybody speak?
everybody speaks. We would not be saying no to any speaker, but we would be categorizing village residents and village taxpayers, which we are permitted to do under statute.
It's also kind of difficult, we come in here and we're supposed to be sitting around discussing policy,
Right.
and suddenly somebody from the audience weighs in, and we don't want to appear to be rude, but that really isn't the object of having people in the audience. They're just here to watch us discuss policy.
That's right, but I'm glad you raised that point, because Wisconsin statutes provides that a governmental body can discuss any matter raised by the public during a public comment period. That can be discussed with them if it's an agenda item, if it was publicly noticed. So if they're commenting on an agenda item, we can discourse with them.
I think though, Jerry, like if we did this, a lot, you know, we didn't allow them to speak outside of the public comment, would kind of conquer the just weighing in out of the blue.
What's that?
I was just thinking like if they were held to just the public comment area, then they couldn't really chime in.
Right. But that's what the league is saying, allowing the public to interject outside of public comment areas raises significant legal issues. And that's what we want to steer from, folks. If okay with you, we'll postpone to the November 26th meeting. We'll discuss this with Attorney Cole for wording.
Need a motion in a second.
Need a motion to postpone to the next meeting.
So moved.
Jeff,
Second.
Scott, discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed by the same sign. The motion is carried. Item 2, report and approve bids for Historical Society repair work. Apparently, Bill is sorting it all out. Mark, is that?
We did have a bid opening today, and I would like to preface that with, I think Bill should be commended on his job putting this together. He's gone to great lengths to try and protect the village with the hidden cost in repairing this building. Who knows once it's torn into what we're gonna actually have. So with that, we did have 4 qualified bidders that came with sealed bids. However, those bids had 7 alternates, and that was part of Bill's work to try and cover the unknown. So with that, we're not prepared to make a recommendation today. It's probably gonna take a week or somewhere thereabouts. I can give you a range of where I expect it will land. I would say it should land in the $55,000 to $65,000 range, based on bidder 1 and 2. There's quite a discrepancy between bidder 1 and 2, and part of what needs to happen is there needs to be some references checked and make sure that that is a competent bidder before we move forward.
Did any member of the Historical Society indicate what level of participation they, can you get a hold of them?
Sure.
And see what they're planning on doing?
So
Thank you.
I would ask that you postpone this.
Any chance you could give Troy a heads up. Well, Troy, you've got the figure, I guess, 55 to 60, and Peter, it might involve the village borrowing money short-term. But the way the budget looks, it's not gonna result in any type of, it'll result in a tax increase, but nothing significant, so.
Bill knows our timeline, so he's got it on the front
All
burner.
right. We'll have Peter discourse with the Historical Society to see what they're thinking.
Please motion a second to
We have a
postpone.
motion and a second?
No, we need one.
We do, we have that.
No, that was the last one.
Motion.
Just like having your mother at. Motion by Scott, second by Jerry.
She's all
To
agreed to it.
postpone this to the November 26th meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed by the same sign. Motion is carried. Item 3, rescind ordinance number 2018-1, amending ordinance number 415-11, height and area exceptions. Sue, can you give a little background on that?
Okay, this is the ordinance that was approved last year for the flooding, for the special setbacks. If somebody had to put on a mechanical room because they had to move everything out of their basement, and this was approved, but it was only until October 2019. So since that date has passed now, it's, we need to rescind it.
Is there a motion to rescind?
So moved.
Motion by Jeff,
Second.
second by Scott. Discussion.
Is it a pretty good probability that nobody else would be using this?
Nobody has ever used it.
Nobody has ever used it?
No. They were gonna use it once, and because of the way it's written, there was a problem with Bill Cole. He had a problem with the way it was written, and so, and then they ended up using the regular, they went for a variance.
Okay. Did we vote on that?
No, we have a motion, a second, we need a vote.
Motion and second. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. That motion is carried. Item 4, operator's license for Ely Robert Dooley and Felista L. Gerber.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Natalie.
Second.
Second by Troy. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed by the same sign. The motion is carried. Item 5, letter of recommendation for Capital Area Regional Planning Commission applying for pre-disaster mitigation funding. Well, let me just read this for the record. In August 2018, just part of this, the communities in the Black Earth Creek watershed sustained extensive damage to homes, businesses, and infrastructure after a record rainfall event. Although the greatest rainfall amounts were observed in the eastern part of the watershed, the most intense flooding and greatest damages were experienced by downstream communities. Public and individual assistance expenditures from the resulting disaster declaration currently total over $1.2 million for the village of Mazomanie alone. In an area where resources are limited and hazards cross city boundaries, regional collaboration is critical to building flood resilience. The proposed watershed green infrastructure plan will ultimately serve as a blueprint for increasing flood resilience through projects that provide stormwater storage and infiltration, floodwater storage and diversion, floodplain and stream restoration, and/or wetland restoration and creation. These types of projects are cost-effective, provide multiple benefits, and fit well with the watershed's rural land uses and existing mitigation planning framework. In addition to reflecting FEMA's resilient infrastructure priorities, green infrastructure products support several of the flood mitigation objectives of Mazomanie and of the Dane County Natural Hazards Mitigation Plan. Beyond flood protection, green infrastructure provides opportunities for recreation and education, that furthers our current live outside motto. I don't think I'll read the rest. Simply a letter of support for the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission in applying for pre-disaster mitigation funding to create a regional green infrastructure plan for the Black Earth Creek watershed. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
By Troy,
Second.
by Natalie, discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed by the same sign, the motion is carried. Item 6, holiday party. It brought to my attention that given the tight budget period that we're in, it would not be appropriate for the use of village monies to have a holiday party for the board and for employees this year, even though in the past it's been only a family-style meal of chicken and fish and relatively cost effective. I spoke to Ray and asked him if he would be willing to open R&J's on an off Tuesday night for a prime rib dinner for board members, spouses, employees, spouses, significant others. He said he would do so. It'd be a cash bar. Cost of the meal, Ray and I are covering, so it'd be no expense to the village. A date to be determined solely by Ray.
Christmas
Can-
Eve.
No, it can't be Christmas.
You can notify us at some point.
I really don't care.
I think we usually.
Tuesday nights, just give me 2 or 3 weeks to prepare the menu and get ready, and that's all I need.
Usually a January
Yes.
dinner, isn't it?
Awesome.
Maybe the third Tuesday in January, how's that?
That'll be fine.
All right. We're set.
Great, I'm glad we selected that.
It's a, it's a nice venue, and it's just an evening of visiting, and it's not as crowded and noisy as going out to a public restaurant, so. All right, we're into committees, personnel, nothing. Public Works and Property, nothing from Ray. Parks and Rec,
Nothing?
nothing from Jerry. Public Protection and Ordinance,
Nothing.
nothing from Jeff. Please note, with respect to finance, the summary of the general fund through September 30th, and we have an excess of revenue over expenses, 48,000, 9 months into the year, and then the summary of utilities, the water utility and the sewer utility are right on target with budget. The electric utility, both positive. The electric utility is well above budget. And the stormwater utility is under budget, but it's been a year of expenses allocated to stormwater utility with the street work. Still a positive return in that utility. With that, is there a motion for payment of bills?
So moved.
By Natalie.
Second.
Second by Scott. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed by the same sign. Troy,
Yes, so we had a finance committee meeting this week. We have not approved the budget at this point. We're still waiting on numbers from the state. No word yet at this point.
No, Sue's on high alert.
Okay, we're on high alert because basically we have to wait until these numbers show up. Our hope is that we get them within the next few days and we can then set a meeting next week. And our goal is to have this approved within committee and then brought on the 26th?
26th, yeah.
26th, for the board to review and hopefully approve. it's tight. We're still working through some things, and hopefully the state gives us those numbers.
Any idea you wanna set that next meeting, just have to wait?
Well, what
till
I'm
you
worried
see?
about is if we set it, I may have to cancel it if the state hasn't given us anything, so I kinda wanna, I'd like to aim to do that later this week. I looked at my schedule for next week, I've got a lot of mornings open, I've got, right now, I think, one evening next week open, and I may have to make an adjustment to work schedule for that, so I had an email ready to go, but I wanted to wait until the numbers came, because if I say next week Monday, and we still don't have anything by Monday, it's a waste of our time, you know?
Looks like I'm wide open in the mornings all week next week too.
Okay, so I just may aim for something in the mornings. I've got a hold on my schedule at work right now, every morning, so, I wanna wait and see. If we can do it early in the week, I think that's better, just so that way we can get through it, and if we need to meet longer or another time, we can do that next week. Otherwise, if we get it approved, then we can get it out to the board.
Gary, are you pretty available next week morning?
Every day but Tuesday morning.
Every day but Tuesday.
Tuesday's my meeting day.
Well, and that's also the PSC hearing.
So every day but Tuesday, okay. We'll keep you updated, and hopefully you'll get the budget in the email soon, once we get through it.
Okay, we're down to 21, announcements.
I have one thing, and I'm sorry, Mark.
No, go
I
ahead.
mean, I was gonna mention it in my admin report, and I forgot it because I couldn't read it. The PSE hearing for our rate case is the 19th at 10 o'clock in the morning. We're gonna be connected by phone to the hearing room downtown Madison. It's an open meeting, so if anybody wants to come and sit on it, you're certainly welcome. And at that point, we should know what's going on and as far as when it's gonna take effect. Right now, from everything I've heard, there have been no objections or no comments about it, so it's proceeding pretty smoothly right now. And I know Cub was involved in it, and they have no issues with it, so.
I was just going to announce that tomorrow and Thursday, Carrie and Kathy will be attending a certified pool operator course in Madison. Something that we have not had ever that I know of, or at least for a long time, so be a step in the right direction.
Good. Anything further? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Jeff,
Second.
Troy, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.